Magna cum thaws of Harvard, who used to like to hum of historical figures like Simplicissimus and commentary on issues like following the path of least resistance, told me a parable of Loki caught in a tree. And he was told if he could make anyone cry for him, he would go free. The only way he could do that was through trickery. He dropped a twig in someone's eye. Well, it's been clear what the meaning of these parables from Hillary Clinton's gang who promoted Obama. Thaws once said that Jesse being elected president would be something of a favor to the white power structure in America. He was, of course, informed by a lot of Israeli giants in that community. So we know from Carolyn Speranza the way that Carnegie Mellon regards art installations and corporations. And Obama was an installation presidency from the Bush machine, doing the white man a favor and the power structure in the West. They leapfrogged a favor by summoning race to the forefront of the times when we were dealing with a horrifying attack. And of course, the gay community wanted to be included in minority advancement, so there was a bandwagon effect. And this is the legacy of Tim Kaine and Robert Fripp. Now, if you go back to 1980 when Jimmy Carter ran against Reagan, he had an energy program. He wanted to slow down vehicles to 55 miles an hour. And he had a solar energy bank theme. And he understood that the earth was in danger. He lost, and the Clintons came to power supporting Reagan, as did the Beatles throughout the abomination, as did Clinton's sidekick, Tim Kaine, who continues to consider himself a Democrat of the school of Republican martial law. And the legacy of this is the unions in democratic society who brokered a deal with Black Power for the Vietnam War. There was a quid pro quo. Lyndon Johnson on April 1st, 1968, stepped down. And 3 days later, King was shot and the blacks got their union. And this is the union that was used again as an anti-communist union. So the old Joe McCarthy backbiting sect is the enculturation process at places like the community college I went to school. The right wing, the extreme right wing behind Mount Desert Island, that if you try to help blacks, they'll only turn on you. But the tactics by which they were enculturated to do that were the informant tactics, which were good during the Red Scare. Non-coincidentally, because power is power, Mila Vangelis recounts being a woman informing on her husband in the Soviet era, and so it's not the secret police to round up the husband. This is the sort of thing that they do at the community college of Allegheny County, then poison the poet in the mouth. This is the sort of thing that they do. It's just what they do, and it's an old Red Scare tactic that's put to the benefit of the Black Power movement. So, the old rebate, oh, he's a communist, is very similar to, oh, he's a racist. They're used the same way in the punish people the same way, and they intimidate and scare people the same way. But the sort of power that they exercise isn't really clear to innocent people. Robert Fripp used to talk about how if you did something wrong in his neighborhood, your water might go off mysteriously. Um, so there's an idea of instant karma. Like after they hammered me into a shack with a girl and she got what she wanted from me, they justified deafening me. It was instant karma, quid pro quo. This is the mentality. I was in Polk County, Iowa, when somebody wanted something you had, they didn't ask for it. They'd start banging the table and making menacing faces, and their friends would start, grabbing things from you that were different from what they wanted. And it's called extortion. And they'd leave me notes at Mercy Behavioral, like, I think you understand me. This is a Tim King style of tactic. And if you look at Hollywood's pernicious capacity to reward the worst in people, you also see that it's a high privilege drama to be rewarded for the worst in you. When King was killed, there were people who had been saying all along, well, his nonviolence was always in service to white power. I mean, the people who tortured me were from Attica State Prison. Pleading nonviolence is how people keep themselves from being killed when taken into custody. It's not a prisoner's dilemma, it's the mentality of a prisoner. And so they started whooping up just symbolic mayhem as somehow Denmark Vesey. Like if you go out and hurt the political opposition to Donald Trump, you're Denmark Vesey. This is the mentality of the Hollywood monikers. And it wasn't just King being attacked for his law-abidingness, because he was never civilly disobedience. He was the one who was following the law. Blacks had the right to vote in Selma the day that they marched on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. The illegal ones were the Oliver North mining Nicaraguan harbors, beating them in the head, saying, we're not going to register you. That was against the law. That was civil disobedience, but it was also very criminal. So you have, back in Dallas in 1963, a situation where Oswald Mosley, the British Union of Fascists, were laughing behind the curtains at the rods of Jack Ruby's clientele at the Carousel Club. And there's always been a sort of swastika in the strip joints in those regions. So you have the situation of like Nat King Cole was trying to just mingle with the Rat Pack, and he was a nice man. He was not. He suffered. So he burned a cross on his lawn when he moved into what they considered the wrong neighborhood, And the thing is that Thurgood Marshall put him down because one of his arguments was very similar to Sidney Poitier's argument. You're not looking at the whole me. I'm not the one that's going out and protesting. That's what Nat King Cole said. And Thurgood Marshall called him names, said he was an Uncle Tom and so on. So, and they're arguing now that it's because racism is personal. They have the right to get personal with people. In other words, if they want to make licky chops porno to prove you have preference for girls who love you rather than hate you, then they have a right. Somebody may have broken into my house or let themselves into my house. I'm missing my letter from Courtney Kennedy. That's a very personal loss. And it may be that Kennedy's wanted that to happen because I've been pretty argumentative about some of the things that their family has prioritized and gone about ways they've gone about doing things and things they've ignored that I don't think that they should. But be that as it may be around here somewhere. It's just not unusual for licky chop poisoners to get their back up about something they want from me. They justified they're making historic property into something that can be auctioned later. while they torture someone to death as a symbol of the karma of the AIDS attack. And this was a black military um, um, uh, plan. That's the way, when they pretended to find, they were passing it around to each other. That's the way they torment somebody with laws. It's the very rich people pass money. You could have had this, you could have had that, you could have had this, you could have had that. They pass these things under your nose and behind your back. Ha ha, you could have had this girl, you could have had that girl, you could have had this job, you could have had that job. Ha ha ha. And their goal is to burn me at the stake of my father's book, America's Stake in Human Rights. So what you have to understand, I think, is that um, getting people to go about doing things differently involves people being very personal and abusive, being robbed, being subject to terrorism, and a lot of it is justified in the name of progressive ideas. Like the right wing element is the same. I mean, Tim Kaine stands up for Ronald Reagan, but from the Chomsky side of the green line, they call it unionism. You know, and you can't get anybody to look at the evidence that this is what happened. That's really very sad. You know, I had a poet over here, and he was telling me Errol Flynn was anti-racist. Well, there's evidence that he wasn't anti-racist, that he was racially inclusive fascism. That's a very different phenomenon. Racially inclusive fascism means that there's a good kind of black mark who will go along with the genocidal operation, or even think of one and take it to Massey for a pat on the head, which is what's going on in Seattle. These Denmark VC dudes who think that if Trump's friends get to shoot the next dude on the movie set or woman on the movie set as a signal for the international oligarch montage of militarism, that somehow they're Denmark VC. You know, it needs to be analyzed by better minds than mine, but that's dependable information about what's going on, and what anybody's saying is up